kids, right? I hope not, Jeremy said. But if you did, it's not the end of the world, Nelson. I wouldn't wish this on anyone. But if I could go back, I'd do things differently. But in many ways, getting AIDS, this has helped me grow up. I see things a lot more clearly now. I know what's important now. Huh? On and on. I mean, I can just go on and on with this. I mean, it's pathetic in terms of what you can do. I mean, there's another book that's called Boy Meets Boy, where a kid talks that he was taught by his teacher as to that he was, when he was 5 years old, he was gay. The teacher explained to him, "You're gay." Okay, no, he was different, but no, he's gay. Okay. There's just several. I give you a whole bunch of other books as well. It just goes on, and a lot of the books are described in here as to what was really said. But let me also tell you that there are, thank God, some reasonable homosexual voices of dissent, because not all homosexuals are comfortable with the gay activist agenda. In a letter to the Wall Street Journal, Mark Dennis, a homosexual who opposes the intrusion of gay politics into the educational system, writes, "Some of us are deeply embarrassed by the gay agenda, which plans the end of breeders," which is what they call heterosexuals, through a takeover of public education. Tammy Bruce, who many of you have heard of, is an avowed lesbian who disagrees with the gay establishment's agenda. And she says, "The radicals in control of the gay establishment want children in their world of moral decay, lack of self-restraint, and moral relativism. Why? How to better to truly belong to the majority when you're really on the fringe than by taking possession of the next generation." John McKellar, who also speaks about this issue, by the way, those of you who have never heard of this guy, John McKellar, I suggest you Google him. John, M-C-K-E-L-L-A-R. Anyway, he actually really has one of the best phraseologies I've ever seen. He says, "Introducing kindergarten and grade 1 students to alternative behaviors and lifestyles is," and I love this phrase, "it's psychological pedophilia." What a marvelous phraseology. It's psychological pedophilia. You don't have to engage solely in physical contact to molest a child, he says. You can diddle with their minds and their emotions, and this is exactly what a disheartening majority of educated school trustees and teachers endorse. And he goes on and on. Again, there's a whole bunch of other quotes from him. But I do want to, however, give one more quote of his, and then I'll conclude, sir. So I know I'm running a little over time. McKellar's criticism of the radical mindset is very clear in terms of understanding he has sensitivity to the traumatic origins of gay militancy. And I think we all need to be sensitive to this. I don't want to be pictured here as someone who's a homo hater. I mean, I work with homosexuals every day of my life. That's what I do. I counsel people. I work with their parents. I work with spouses. I work with a whole bunch of people. And we're working to help them help themselves. So I'm not here talking negatively to them, but there is this radical fringe that has basically set the agenda. We've got to understand what that radical fringe has done. So McKellar says, he says, "I have often expressed the unfortunate but undeniable truth that the number of times one is called a faggot in the schoolyard is directly proportionate to the stridency of one's activism. When you fancy yourself an oppressed minority, particularly one that is based on a basic human drive and compulsion, you become obsessed with increasing your numbers and with mainstreaming your behavior. You try to evoke guilt and intimidation by incessantly reiterating banal epithets such as hate, homophobic, intolerance, teen suicide, and self-esteem. You quickly discover that the optimum way to ensure future supporters to your cause and ideology is through the minds of the young. You skillfully master the techniques of invoking sympathy, hiding the truth, and presenting a sanitized portrait of gay life." This is a man who is happily gay. He's never changed. But he says, "I understand what my brothers and sisters are doing out there." He has a group called Project Hope. It stands for Homosexuals Opposed to Pride Extremism. What a wonderful name. Let me just finish up with one last thing that I think is really important, or actually it's two points I really want to make. The sexualization of society and the media. To really understand how Kirk and Madsen's war plan succeeded, you got to understand there's a ninth point in their agenda that is never articulated by them. It's not in black and white. It's really too big. No special interest group could have implemented such a plan. The homosexual movement did not have to implement the plan. It was really done for them. The sexualization of the media in the broadest sense has had enormous impact on society at large and has given tremendous impetus to the liberalization of sexual mores overall. Don't forget, it's through the ubiquitous use of sex in advertising, in movies, in television, in fashion, sex as entertainment, sex as economic incentive, sex as a substitute for thought, sex for communication, sex for edification. That's given a green light and a public blessing to the unashamed use of sex as a crass commodity of self-gratification. There is no question but that this trend is principally heterosexual in origin. And it's only by riding the crest of this commoditization of sex movement that the homosexual movement could have gotten where it is today. It's only a culture where sexual gratification is valued more than physical and emotional well-being, where the pursuit of the former can occur to the total neglect of the latter. It's only in a society where political, economic, cultural, and religious leaders have lost their moral grip on themselves. I mean, just look at Roman Polanski, all these people that are coming out and saying, oh, well, he raped a 12-year-old, 13-year-old girl. Oh, well, let him go. Don't worry about it. I mean, and this is Woody Allen scandal a few years ago. I mean, it goes on and on. That the gay affirmative agenda, like the one we're examining, could have insinuated itself and insulated itself within our school systems with virtually no opposition. Kids are experimenting at younger and younger ages with sex. Oral sex, mutual masturbation, nudity, exposure, as well as intercourse. I mean, the texting stuff is all over the papers now, has dramatically increased among middle-aged school students up to age 13 and 14 years old. One 13-year-old told the New York Times, great New York Times I read all the time, okay? They said that in the third grade they began watching the TV programs Beverly Hills 90210. Many of you remember that program, I hope? And he says, we wanted to try what they were doing in the show. So together with his friends, they developed a schedule for sexual initiation. In the third grade, they got familiar with slang terms for masturbation and oral sex. In the fourth grade, they were playing kissing games with the girls. In the fifth grade, they were dating. In the sixth grade, French kissing and petting. By the seventh grade, they'd done oral sex, and some of them had intercourse. By the ninth grade, this boy reported, it was just one big spree of going all the way. This is all heterosexual, folks. Nothing to do with homosexual. USA Today reports that as many as 1/3 of all middle school girls have performed oral sex on boys. According to Dr. Dean Edel of the HealthCentral.com, many young teens who engage in oral sex don't even believe they're having sex. 27% of the 10,000 teenagers who answered the magazine survey described oral sex as, quote, a fun thing to do with a guy. So let me conclude by simply saying that what we're in today is a new culture of absolute individuality and a culture of narcissism. And we here in this room have to change that culture. That's our job. The gay radical mantra of absolute individuality or exaggerated individualism is part of a larger trend in society that has become a culture of narcissism. This trend is an outgrowth of the exaggerated importance that society has come to attach to self-realization and individual fulfillment. Several rabbis who I've read can't be far off when they say that this is the ideification of the self which creates a conflict within the family systems and breeds the dissolution of the family. On a broader societal level, individual autonomy, independence, self-realization, the right to choose, the right to privacy, the right to be different, the right to express oneself, all of which in an appropriate context are laudable and worth striving for, have instead become the slogans for the meaning and the purpose of life itself. Every individual from childhood on is continually exalted as a unique personality endowed with special, one-of-a-kind qualities, and is exhorted to pursue his own personal pleasure, not as a reward for some worthy achievement, but purely as a privilege of that purportedly unique individuality. This distorted vision, in my judgment, of the American dream has created an environment where to live for the moment is the prevailing passion. To live for yourself, not to live for your predecessors or to live for posterity. Not even, for that matter, to live for your country or for your community. We are fast losing the sense of historical continuity, the sense of belonging to a succession of generations originating in the past and stretching all the way into the future. Family relationships today are far more tenuous. Each person within the family now is absorbed in their own separate world. Singlehood has now become in America a preferred value to marriage. Just think of the ages at which girls and guys are getting married, later and later and later, sooner they even get married. And marriage is valued without parenthood. Divorce is routine, and sex without marriage, whether casual or cohabitant, is very commonplace. Carryings on of the most private and personal kind, reason not too long ago for shame and elaborate secrecy, are now flaunted. Letterman just comes out and says, oh yeah, by the way, I kind of played around with a couple girls on my staff, but hey, you know, I went to the DA and someone wanted to blackmail me about it. People talk openly and in the media about their own extramarital affairs. Barbara Walters writes her book, and she says, oh yeah, you know, I slept with Senator what's-his-name from Massachusetts, Senator Brooke in Massachusetts. They boast of their exploits. They joke ubiquitously about masturbation. They read, they view, exchange, and discuss pornographic materials. Even TV celebrities publicly praise movie scenes of explicit sexual depiction. And we take pleasure in watching the reality shows where fellow men and women humiliate themselves in front of a TV camera. A new breed of how-to sex manuals which unabashedly teach fetishism, sadism, masochism, oral and anal sex are sold in the bookstores. Sexual imagery is used to sell everything from jeans to toothpaste. Every new movie and every TV season brings a flood of new sexually oriented material of ever-escalating prurience, tastelessness, and violence. All of this in an atmosphere of political correctness, of intolerance, and hostility toward any legitimate criticism. Today's cultural acceptance of homosexuality and the oppressive climate of political correctness has created a new prison, a prison of darkness for those homosexuals who are genuinely interested in changing their sexual orientation or are seriously confused or conflicted about their own same-sex attractions. Michael Gladzy, who's the former editor of a newspaper called Young Gay American, a former homosexual, explains part of the homosexual agenda is getting people to stop considering that conversion is even a viable question to be asked, let alone whether it works or it doesn't. None of the foregoing, none of what I've spoken about here, would have any practical meaning whatsoever if those afflicted by homosexuality or other sexual issues did not have a real possibility of growing, healing, and changing, of transforming themselves. And I will speak about that tomorrow. They do. But the culture in which we live, today's culture, doesn't want us to know, and has done everything in its power to keep us from finding out. Thank you.